Hello everyone, I come bearing gifts. The gifts are 3 new holiday minis. Enjoy! The first prompt is ice skating. The class is a fighter, and then we're going to do body parts and poses. It's going to be interesting to tie in ice skating with this. And then for the body parts, I'll be honest, I considered this. I considered it for a minute, but I want the character to have a little bit more than just buttocks, so I ended up rolling for a thumb. I usually go with the first prompt, but this time I needed something a little bit more. I'm gonna do a dwarf or maybe a halfling woman today. First things first, I'm going to get her into that pose. Then I had to build the ice skates, so I'm trying to find a decent base. I kind of wanted to be more old-fashioned ice skates with lots of lace, basically just leather boots with blades at the bottom. And then I'm gonna have to make those blades. Pulling out a bunch of different options like spears and swords. It's hard to hide the staff, but I figured if I put it up in the boot, like I did now, and elongate it, and then add some playing cards as the attachments, it actually kind of worked. So just hiding the handle up inside the boot worked like a charm. And now we've got ice skates. I expected that to be a little bit more of a challenge, and what I didn't expect to be such a challenge was coming up with who this character was, what she's wearing, what her deal is, why she's pointing. The lore didn't come to me as quickly. And she ended up kind of looking like a certain arcane character, which I just let be for a minute to see if that inspired anything. Spoiler alert, I ended up tweaking it a bit towards the end. Just adding a few braids in her hair, give her some more depth. As she's a fighter, I wanted her to be somewhat suited up. And since she's on the ice, I'm thinking of it more as natural ice. Maybe she's crossing a frozen lake. So she's going to be armored and also pretty well bundled. Again, this is where I was kind of hitting a wall. I wasn't really crazy about her look, and she looks very childish, which would have been an interesting character, but I wanted to move away from it and age her up a little. Adding some shoulder plates around her waist to make another armored skirt layer. And I know in the pose the woman is holding a gun. I just am choosing to go against that, still keep the pose somewhat the same, but I wanted her to have a sword. I felt like that's where I could add in some details, some hints about who this character is, since the armor wasn't revealing that for me. Some people are really, really good at customizing weapons. And I don't know what sort of experience makes someone good at that, but whatever it is, I seem to be lacking it. I kind of just tack on a bunch of interesting objects and hope that it works. So I've got the rune shield, I've got the ice crown, and I wanted to add a little bit more at the bottom, but I wasn't loving how that looked either. Again, doing that kitbashing hack where you attach something that won't shrink down anymore to something that will shrink down, and then you can get really small. So there's a lot of hidden rings everywhere. I wanted to give her this like very impressive, elegant sword that I plan on coloring in a mystical way. And yeah, here I'm changing the pose, but I think the essence of the pose is still there. She's still got a strong stance. She's still pointing in a threatening manner. And I wanted her to be sort of skidding to a stop. So I've got this ice that's spraying out from under her skate. So perhaps she's pointing at whoever's next. Perhaps she's already slain some foes. Maybe she's skated through them epically and took them all down. She's starting to look older, and the hat made her ears pop more. I almost forgot the thumb detail. So I'm going to take her thumb away and replace it with something. And I ended up going for this, I believe it's like a bracer that I shrunk down to go over her thumb. So even her thumb's a weapon, which I think would be interesting should she ever get caught. Maybe it's a last resort way to escape. She's got a very commanding presence. I feel like she's commanding an army or a group. I painted the sword first to try and get a palette. I've also been experimenting trying to make fabric look more transparent. that cloth in front of her I wanted to be a bit more sheer. I like the coloring on her hat. It actually does look like it's very fuzzy. And I made the decision to remove her cloak and then also color in that top bit of her chest piece to look like it's her skin. And now something clicked. She does look older now that she's not so covered up. She looks more aged and epic and intriguing. It's not just because you can see her cleavage. And then I also had her arms revealed a little bit more underneath her wraps. So it seems like she's equipped for the cold, but she doesn't mind it so much. Maybe she's used to it. Especially if she's capable of fighting on ice skates. This one took a long time to grow on me, but at the end, I'm quite satisfied with her character. This definitely feels more like a character piece than a scene, and I think this would be a great mini for someone if they wanted to use it in a campaign. Just messing around trying to add more detail. When in doubt, add a chain. And there we go. There's the ice skating fighter. Missing a thumb, and in a striking, pointing pose. Alright, next up we're gonna do Santa. Yay! He's gonna be a bard. And we've got bugs and flowers. I got a Carolina tiger beetle, this guy right there, and allium. Those look like Dr. Seuss flowers, don't they? I started with the beetle. Hero Forge does not have, I don't think, any insects really besides spiders that are just already pre-made, ready to be messed around with. You have to pretty much build them from scratch. So I'm using insectoid tails and body parts, and then I used spheres and spider legs to bring it all together. Those eyes are eggs. I'm gonna shrink this guy down so small that the details aren't gonna be super important. I think the coloring is really what's gonna bring it together. But for now, there's just a giant bug on your screen. There he is. All right, let's start with Santa Claus. Giving him his big old belly. Aging him up. Making sure he's got nice pronounced round cheeks and a cute little button nose. I was wondering if I did eventually roll Santa, if he was going to be an intense Santa, like a cool Santa, a barbarian Santa. But I'm taking a sweet Santa approach. He's going to be super relaxed. He's going to be zen. He's going to be welcoming. More of the classic Santa we know and love. My idea for this is that he's going to be holding the bug in a field of flowers, or however I can kitbash, and it's going to be that time of year where the snow starts to melt, and there's little patches of snow everywhere, but grass is poking through, and it's starting to get warm, but it's still a little chilly. So it's his off season, he's kind of on his holiday. And because he's a bard, I'm making him a harmonica out of a ruler. This Santa is totally relaxed, he's one with nature, he's kind to every being, no matter how many legs they have. He's going to be sitting by this little pond. For the allium, I had to come up with a way to represent that perfectly round, spherical flower. And I ended up on the pine cone. And it worked for now, but I'm gonna go back and tweak it later. I don't know why I keep attempting to make water in Hero Forge, like bodies of water. It rarely works. It's hard to represent liquid, but I'm going with the burger patty as usual. It's got nice ripples. I considered giving him wings for a second. I'm giving him his typical rosy complexion, white and gray beard, and then his clothes I'm toning down a little bit. They're going to be a deeper, rich red. It'll work more with the color palette that I'm thinking of for his surrounding. March kind of gets a bad rap because it's kind of brown and cold, but I personally really like this time of year because things are starting to wake up again. So I'm putting my love for that season into this mini. And then the allium, I just could not deal with the pine cones. It just didn't look right, so I'm just switching them out for snowballs, which is kind of ironic, making them pink, and I think they look a lot better, and they still keep that, is this a Dr. Seuss flower look? I'm coloring in those little patches of snow and making sure there's grass poking out. It gives it a damp feel to the scene. And then I finally get to color in the little Carolina tiger beetle. which truthfully is a very pretty little bug. I love shiny bugs. I'm making him even smaller using that ring trick. I don't know what would happen if you tried to print this mini because it's so tiny, but that's not a goal I'm keeping in mind right now. I was a little concerned Santa looks like he's afraid of the bug. I hope that it comes across that he's intrigued by it, he's enjoying having it crawl over his hand. I'm muddying him up a little bit. And there we go. There's Santa, the bard, with the Carolina tiger beetle and the allium flower, relaxing by a melting pond after a very well done Christmas. And finally, we've got an angel sorcerer with a random object and a random biome, which is going to be a paintbrush and freshwater. I don't think I've ever done an angel, so I'm excited. I don't know why I hold back on giving characters things like wings. I'm laying out all these hair pieces to see what meshes best together. I want them to have just rolling waves, sort of unkempt, all over the place hair. It took quite a bit of tweaking, and then of course, I didn't pose the character first, so once I moved them, it all came apart and I had to start over. My idea for this was the angel is going to be painting winter, so the opposite scene of Santa. This is autumn turning into winter, also another great time of year. I think I like changing of seasons. I'm using the new weapon swipe to be the swipe of their paintbrush as they're painting ice onto this lake. the clothes, I decided to incorporate more of earthy themes, like the fungal armor, and then lots of flowing fabric. I made the cattails out of flowers and hot dogs. I just wanted to add some nature to the scene, so I've got those birds in their nest, lily pads with a toad looking up as the angel's essentially letting him know it's time to hibernate. I wanted their hair and clothing to sort of represent the environment that they're in. So lots of browns, just little hints of green to represent pine and other evergreens. Those red berries from perhaps a hawthorn. And even the wings, I kind of wanted to give a nod to blue herons, as they spend a lot of their time in the freshwater. I'm keeping most of the tones very muted, so wherever there is color, it does pop, as you can see with the red. I think this is a very beautiful piece. I like the tale it's telling. It feels very peaceful, makes me think of sleeping, finally resting after a long year. And I'm also adding some details to show that the ice is magical. Everything is freezing because of them, and they're very happy to do it. Once again, I wish that there was an opacity setting for decals. Instead, you have to make colors a little darker and a little less saturated if you don't want them to be too overpowering. But there's the freshwater angel with her paintbrush, using her sorcery to turn the lake to ice. I hope you enjoyed these minis. I certainly did. I hope to see you again for some future ones.